So this is going to be a short instructional video on how to read, write, and compare decimals. Okay, so if we're going to read a decimal number, we're going to begin with the digits or the number to the left of the decimal or the numbers that are in front of it. We would read these just as we would any other number, even if there wasn't a decimal there. When we get to the decimal, we say and. Okay, then we move on and we read the numbers that are after the decimal, the numbers to the right. And we read these like normal as if there were no decimal there either. The thing that's tricky is that we look at the place value of the last digit, and whatever place value it has, that is the last word we say. We're going to do a couple of examples so that makes sense and it's a little more clear. So we're going to go ahead and look at this first number here. We can see that to the left of the decimal or in front of the decimal, we see the number 12. So we're going to write down 12. And then there's a decimal, so we're going to say the word and. We're going to read the number after the decimal just as we normally would, and it looks like it's just 3. And then we have to see how many places after the decimal it is. Well, it's only one place after the decimal, and one place after the decimal is called the tenths. So I'm going to follow this up with the word tenths. So this number is 12 and 3/10. Let's check out the next one so you can see it's gotten a little bit larger. So on this next one, again, we're going to start with that number 12. And then I get to the decimal, so I say and. And I'm going to read the number as if there was no decimal, and it looks like it's 34. And there are 2 numbers after the decimal. So 2 places after the decimal is called the hundredths. So I'm going to end this by saying hundredths. So this ends up being 12 and 34 hundredths. All right. And our last one, I'm pretty sure you probably know where I'm going with this. Again, we're starting with 12 and, because I'm at the decimal, and then I would read that number as if there were no decimal. It's 345. A lot of us like to say 345, but you don't actually put an and there. It's just the numbers you see, so 345. And then it's 3 numbers after the decimal, and we can see 3 places after the decimal is called the thousandths. So I'd write thousandths. So this is 12 and 345 thousandths. All right, now if you can read a decimal number correctly, then you should be able to write it if you hear somebody just speak it. So that's what we're going to be practicing on this slide. So reading the decimal, you just use the exact same rules we just discussed and just write down what you hear with numbers instead. So let's go ahead and look at our first example here. We have 1 and 2/10. So I hear 1 and then I hear the word and. So whenever I hear and, that means decimal point. So 1 and 2/10. I might look over here at my chart and I see tenths means that I'm just one place after the decimal. So I can put that 2 just one place after the decimal, 1 and 2/10. Let's go ahead and try another one. 1 and 23/100. So I have 1, then the word and, that means I have a decimal point, 23. I know how to write 23 hundredths, and I'm just going to check. So right now I'm showing 2 digits after the decimal, so I'm going to go over here and make sure that hundredths really is 2 places after the decimal, and I'm looking here, I see tenths, I see hundredths. It is, so I've done that correct. All right, let's try the next one. 1 and 200ths. Now this one's going to get tricky. So I hear 1 and 200ths. That's what it sounds like. If I'm at hundredths, let's check and make sure that that's just one place after the decimal as I've written it. I'm going to go over here and I see one place after the decimal is not called the hundredths. That's called the tenths. 2 places after the decimal is the hundredths. So I actually need that 2 to look like it's 2 places after the decimal. So I would not write it this way. I would write 1 and 2 hundredths. I would put this little 0 here to show that there are no tenths, and then move the 2 into the hundredths place, because remember, I always say the place value of the last digit. All right, that's going to be the ones that are going to trick you the most. Let's look at our very last one. So this one says 1 and decimal point 23 thousandths. So again, this one I would want to write 23 thousandths. Now I have 2 digits after the decimal, and I'm going to look over here and make sure that thousandths is 2 places after the decimal. So I see tenths and hundredths, and that's not correct. Thousandths is 3 places after the decimal. So it's going to work just like the one we did up above. I'm going to have 1 and put a 0 there to show there's no tenths. 23 thousandths. Since I said thousandths, that last digit has to be in the thousandths place. So these are going to probably be the trickiest ones that you're going to come across. All right, so let's talk about comparing decimals. There's really 2 ways to compare decimals. So I've set us up an example here. One way to do it is just make sure that you have the same number of digits after the decimal. So in this example here, you can see there's only 1 number after the decimal, and over here I have 2 numbers after the decimal. So I just want them to have the same number of digits. The way I do that, excuse me, is just easily add a 0 at the end. Just tack on a 0. So I'm going to tack on a 0, and now they both have 2 digits after the decimal. So here you can see I have 8 and 70 hundredths, and I have 8 and 69 hundredths. Then it's pretty easy for the kids to figure that out. If I have 70 versus 69, 70 is going to be larger. So that's how I would compare that. That one's larger. Okay, my other option is I could go back to this exact same example, 8 and 7 tenths and 8 and 69 hundredths, but this time instead write them as a fraction. So I'm going to still keep the 8, but I'm going to write this part 7 tenths. And this one's 8 and 69 hundredths. Now I can't compare these yet because you cannot compare hundredths with tenths. They actually have to have the same denominator or bottom number. So I'm just going to tack on a 0 here, and if I tack on a 0 on the bottom, I have to tack on a 0 on the top. So I have 8 and 70 100ths and 8 and 69 100ths. So this one is clearly larger. So those are the 2 ways that you can compare decimals. If you're an English-speaking student, this is as far as you need to go into the video. The next couple of slides, I'm not going to speak on either. Those are just for Spanish-speaking students if they need to read the text in Spanish. Okay, I hope this helps. Have a nice day.